Hello again and welcome to another Mordian Glory, the old world video. In today's episode, we shall be diggy holing. We shall be crying out rock and stone, brothers, because it is time for a smash or pass. Let's take a look at every single dwarf unit in the old world and give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down. What is good? What is bad? What should be in your army? And what should you avoid? And so without further ado, let's heft our pickaxe and dig right into today's episode. Attention conscripts, I am excited to announce the launch of the official second Mordian Glory channel. If you're curious, click on the link down in the description and head over to Mordian Glory Games. I upload to the channel several times a week with all sorts of fun and silly gaming content. So if you're jonesing for even more Mordian Glory content, then head on over to Mordian Glory Games and don't forget to subscribe. Starting at the tippity top of the mountain, we have got the characters and the Dwarf Lords. Dwarf Lords come in two varieties. You have the King and you have the Thane. The King is what you would think of as your traditional Lord level character, and he has a stat line to reflect it with an eye-watering weapon skill 7, toughness 5 and 3 wounds and 4 attacks, and a staggering leadership 10. Kings get access to a lot of magic items as well, with up to 125 points being spent on runes. And you can upgrade them to either have an Oathstone or Shield Bearers. And the Oathstone means that you can basically always issue challenges and they cannot be refused. And if you have an Oathstone, then you automatically pass any panic checks they're required to make, but they can't choose to flee as a charge reaction. Basically, he slaps down the Oathstone and goes, "Come at me now!" And Shield Bearers is basically your equivalent of being able to mount them on like a big monstrous mount. Obviously, dwarves aren't going to be flying around on dragons or anything like that. It'd be cool if they could, but that's not their style. And so Shield Bearers gives them an extra 3 wounds and a whole bunch of additional attacks with some hand weapons, essentially. Now, the Thane is basically the hero level version of the King. You're going to have worse stats across the board, but you are going to be significantly cheaper. In fact, you are less than half the price of a King. You can't get quite as much magical stuff as well, with only 75 points being spent on runes, but 75 points are still very good. And you can still have an Oathstone, and you can still have Shield Bearers. In my opinion, both of these characters are an easy smash. I never leave home without my Dwarf Lord. I never leave home without a King and a Thane in my army. Having a King on top of Shield Bearers loaded up with all of the combat runes makes for an absolute blender, an absolute beast. And I have had Dwarf Lords go toe to toe with goddamn Chaos Demon Princes and come out the other side having easily, handily beaten them. And the Thane, I always put one in my army because I'm a big believer in the BSB. Even with dwarves having a naturally high leadership, you would be surprised how often it comes up. Oh yeah, leadership 9, no problem. Oh crap, just rolled a 10. Better re-roll it. Thank God I had the BSB. In a game where breaking your enemy can lead to huge increases in victory points, having someone who can keep your guys around is very important. And remember, dwarves don't run very far away. So if you do break, you're more than likely going to get cut down. So sticking around is very important. Next, we have the Anvil of Doom. This is a really badass model, and for pure rule of cool, I've got to give it a smash. But also from a strategic, a tactical, and in-game usefulness point of view, this is a very good unit. It essentially acts as a level 3 wizard in your army, and when you combine that with the fact that a lot of dwarves are going to have magical resistance 1 or higher, it essentially allows you, with an Anvil of Doom, to dispel the same as if you did have a level 4. But the Anvil of Doom is not only a strong magical defense, it also can be a huge force multiplier. You can strike the runes, which essentially allows you to do a whole bunch of bound spells, and you can do one of these a turn. And you've got the Rune of Oath and Steel, which makes you reroll some armor saves. You've got the Rune of Hearth and Home, which starts making everyone immune to psychology. The Rune of Haste and Urgency, which can make a unit move again, very good on slow moving dwarves. And you've got the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, which is a magic missile with a 27-inch range. However, even though it's a very good unit, it is not a perfect unit, and the Anvil of Doom does have two big weaknesses in my mind. Firstly, it is immovable. Once it has been deployed, it cannot move. And even though some of its casting ranges are very high, inevitably, especially on certain missions, you're going to find yourself out of range of the anvil. You might think that, well, I'll just stay near my anvil and force the enemy to come to me, but you are going to encounter armies that can outshoot you. Empire gun lines, Wood Elf bow spam, sitting back and just getting peppered at range is not something that you can necessarily afford to do. And if that happens, you may find you moving out of range of a lot of your anvil's abilities. On top of this, it is quite expensive, coming at 235 points, and that is more than 10% of your points allowance at a standard 2,000 point game. Overall, I am going to give the Anvil of Doom a smash, because it's cool and it has got a lot of great abilities, but you're definitely going to want to build your army list around it to get the most out of it. Our next characters are the Runesmiths. This is the Runelord and the Runesmith. Like with our Dwarf Lords, you have a big version and you have a little version. The Runelord is the chonky boy. He's got a good weapon skill, he's got some good wounds, and he comes in at 120 points. The Runesmith has less weapon skill and also less toughness and less wounds and initiative and attacks. Generally just a worse stat line, but it's significantly cheaper at 65 points. The Runelord can take 125 points worth of runes, and the Runesmith can take 75 points. What's really cool about the Runesmiths is their Fireforge ability. Any unit that is joined by a Runesmith gains Armor Bane 2 and Flaming Attack special rules. Now that's not just at range, that is also in combat. They also have an inbuilt magic resistance of 2, which is a little higher than the usual magic resistance of 1 you find on other dwarf units. Despite having a lot of advantages, I'm going to have to begrudgingly give the Runesmiths a pass. It's not because they are bad units, and you may find a very good use for them in your army, but the problem is that there are just better choices. I always find room for my Dwarf King, but I rarely find room for a Runelord, and if I really want to go down the rune route, I'll probably go for an Anvil of Doom instead. Another set of characters which I'm going to have to give a pass to as well are the Slayers. The Demon Slayer and the Dragon Slayer. Again, you've got the Lord level and you've got the Hero level. You've got the big boy and the little boy. The Demon Slayer in this case is the Lord level, and the Dragon Slayer in this case is the Hero level. The problem with these characters is that even though they have a pretty impressive stat line with leadership 10 and weapon skill 7, T5, you look at these guys, you're thinking these are Dwarf Lord level, these are kings, these are thanes, these are beasts. Problem is simply that they don't get any armor. So they've got death blow and ground weapons and a whole laundry list of rules, and you can give them some interesting rune upgrades. They can get like 125 points on the Lord, 75 points on the Dragon Slayer, but it's just the fact that they are going to die in any situation that you put them into. It's just not great. So very, very cool. Rule of cool, amazing, but sadly, just not durable enough. And if you lose them, you're going to give up a lot of points to your opponent. The last character that we have is the Engineer. Now, Engineers are a really good unit. They're cheap at only 50 points. Their stat line isn't much to write home about, but the big thing about them is they have the Artillery Master rule. This is similar to the Empire one, where you can re-roll a single artillery dice, so it stops your war machines from blowing up. What's also kind of cool is that you can choose to have a unit re-roll hit rolls of 1. as well, and this can apply to Quallers and also Thunderers. So if you don't have a lot of war machines, but you decide to go for some more of the shooty infantry, you can still boost those with the engineers. It's not quite as good as the Empire one, because you want to be able to have that sweet ballistic skill 5 and apply that to a war machine, but it is still a good ability. Moving on from the characters, we have got the infantry, and starting off we have the humble Dwarf Warrior. Sadly, I am going to give Dwarf Warriors a pass, even though they are an iconic unit of the Dwarves, and they feel like they should be in every list. They're just core, right? The issue is that they don't really do anything spectacular. Their weapon skill is fine. Their points value is fairly cheap at 8 points. Their natural toughness 4. But when you have such easy access to Longbeards as your core, if you take a king or a thane as your general, then you get Longbeards as a core choice. It really overshadows Dwarf Warriors. Longbeards are just better in every single way, and that means that they are going to be the go-to choice. Speaking of Longbeards, you can probably figure it out, but they definitely get a smash. They have better weapon skill. They are naturally strength 4, so when given great weapons, they go up to strength 6. And they also have veteran inbuilt, and they're also venerable, so they're a force multiplier. Just overall a solid unit. I have used Dwarf Longbeards. I have used Dwarf Warriors. I now, going forward, only really use Dwarf Longbeards. That is, of course, when we're not talking about taking a Royal Clan, which we'll get to later. Our next infantry choice are the Quallers and Thunderers. These have got the same stat line of Dwarf Warriors, except they are 1 less weapon skill, making them not quite as good in combat. But they do get crossbows or handguns, depending on which flavour you go for, and they can still get loads of melee choices. Unlike a lot of armies, ranged troops who are ranged, and they don't really do anything in combat, Quallers can take great weapons, they can take shields, so you can get shot by them, and then when you charge in, they just pull out a bunch of great weapons and just chop you to pieces. I'm going to give Quallers and Thunderers a smash. Depending on which one you go for is purely going to depend on whether you want to have 30-inch range or 24-inch range, a bit more punch. But the big thing is here that you can save a lot of points, because you can have your Quallers and your Thunderers unleash a couple of volleys, and then you can just redress the ranks, get those shields ready, or get those great weapons ready and start doing some work in combat. You might not be as good as a lot of dedicated combat units, but you can absolutely hold your own. And with Leadership 9 and Dwarf Crafted, meaning you don't suffer the penalty for stand and shoot, the enemy is going to take a lot of pain on the way in, and you're going to be sticking around with your resolute leadership. Another amazing unit and an easy smash is the Rangers. Rangers are both skirmishers and scouts. They have open order, they've got move through cover, they've got dwarf crafted, they get crossbows, they get everything. Frankly, Rangers are phenomenally undercosted and phenomenally capable. Rangers are one of the best dwarf units because they can chop, they can shoot, they're tough, they're relatively fast with being scouts and skirmishers. They're really good, and if an opponent isn't ready for them, they can start scouting behind the lines, going after war machines. And unlike maybe going after war machines with a light unit that maybe doesn't got much staying power, Rangers are a pain in the ass to get rid of if they manage to get behind you. But we've been talking about a lot of ranged units, but sometimes you've just got to get stuck in. Sometimes you just need to absolutely twat your opponent's units. And when that is called for, accept no substitute over the Hammerers. Both figuratively and literally a smash unit. Hammerers are possibly the best dwarf infantry in the book, especially in the regular Grand Army. They've got a base of weapon skill 5. They have got a base of strength 3, of toughness 3. And they've got leadership 9. They're like chaos warriors. They're really good. They're really good. And when you charge them, they get additional attacks, and they also get extra initiative. Their great hammers are like great weapons, but they don't suffer the initiative penalty. And they also have got magical attacks as well. They've got royal guards, so you can't ever have your characters challenged out. They come with heavy armor. They're just amazing all round. They've got stubborn inbuilt as well. Truly phenomenal. Good unit in every single situation. Next on the line, we have the Ironbreakers. Whilst the Hammerers will hammer anything into the ground, the Ironbreakers don't really do a lot of damage, but they just refuse to give up. If you need a unit that will take a charge from anything in the game and come out the other side relatively unscathed, they might take a few casualties. Against the best of out there, they might take quite a few casualties, but they are not going to bend. They are not going to break. They come with full plate armor. They come with shields. They come with an inbuilt 6-up ward save, and they also come with reroll 1s to their armor save. And with the Anvil of Doom, they can get full rerolls to their armor save. I don't know of many other infantry choices that get a 3-up save rerollable with a ward save inbuilt. They only have hand weapons. They're not going to do a lot of damage, but not going to take much either. Sometimes tying up a lot of your points in a unit that isn't going to readily give them up can be a very savvy way of securing victory. They're tough and they're good. Ironbreakers are a smash. Even better than Ironbreakers though, you've got Iron Drakes. So these are the shooty version of Ironbreakers. They still get the full plate armor, but one of the phenomenal things about this unit is they have the Drake guns. Now, Drake guns have an 18-inch range, they're strength 5, the AP -1. They're also quick shot, and armor bane 2, and flaming attacks, and dwarf crafted. And they come with an inbuilt ballistic skill of 4, and the Iron Warden has an inbuilt ballistic skill of 5. Now, this means that if you try and charge a unit of Iron Drakes, you are going to take a lot of pain on the way in. You are going to be getting hit on 3s, remember, because when it comes stand and shoot, you can wait till the optimum range to unleash the shots. And what gets even better is these guys can be a detachment for the Ironbreakers. So you could have multiple units of Ironbreakers with Iron Drake attachments. You could just unleash Dwarven Hell, Dwarven Steel, Dwarven Fury on any unit that is foolish enough to charge you. On their own, they're a smash. With Ironbreakers, they're a double smash party. But sadly, all good things must come to an end. And the Miners are a pass. Miners are basically Dwarf Warriors, which can ambush and Vanguard, which is fine, I suppose. But they cost as much as Longbeards. And I'm really not convinced that ambush and Vanguard is really worth it. Really not worth that 12 points per model. And you could take a Longbeard, have better weapon skill, have better strength. Maybe there's some way to make the Miners work. But for me, they're a pass. And I've never really had a strong desire to include them in any of my army lists. Slayers are also a very, very cool unit, but one which is going to get a pass. When I first looked at these guys, I thought that they had a ton of potential. But like with their characters, they just don't have any armor. And they're probably going to get charged first. And so the enemy's going to go in there and just absolutely batter them. And if you're lucky, you might get some swings back. But you also might be very unlucky and not get any swings back because everyone's dead. One thing to mention though is they are unbreakable. And there aren't actually a lot of unbreakable things in the dwarves. We have a lot of stubborn. Like Ironbreakers used to be unbreakable, now they're just stubborn. So if you need something that can just hold an enemy up for a little bit, maybe Slayers are a good option. They're guaranteed to have to be killed to a last man, but the enemy is probably going to kill them. Ironbreakers probably do the job better, and they are a little bit more expensive, but that's before you take into account things like additional hand weapons and great weapons, which you almost certainly need to put on the Slayers. Don't get me wrong, I love Slayers, and I do think they have a lot of potential, and I do think a unit of them in an army is very cool, and I did a whole video about how cool and badass I thought that they were, but I think from a competitive point of view, they are going to struggle a little bit. We move away from the infantry and onto the quote-unquote cavalry. Now, dwarves don't get cavalry, but under the cavalry section of the book, they do get helicopters. I love it. So you've got the Dwarf Gyrocopter and the Dwarf Gyrobomber. The Gyrocopter is a smash unit. It's cheap and it's fast and it can fight a little bit and it can shoot a little bit and it can dive bomb a little bit. It's overall really good for 60 points. The Gyrobomber, unfortunately, it's just not worth it. It's 35 points more and you get an extra wound and you can dive bomb a bit better, but the dive bomb is probably the worst bit about the Gyrocopter, so really leaning into it, the Gyrobomber, nah. The Gyrocopters smash, Gyrobombers pass. Last but certainly not least, we have the war machines. We've got bolt throwers, grudge throwers, cannons, auger guns, and flame cannons. Bolt throwers are cheap, but they rely upon ballistic skill to hit. And considering that they only have ballistic skill 3, I'm not sure that they're worth it. If the engineer had ballistic skill 4, like the Empire one, and could apply his ballistic skill to the bolt thrower, I think it would be good. But because of ballistic skill 5, the game designers have clearly gone, can't have him passing that out to people, and so he's not able to give the bolt thrower his ballistic skill. So I'm going to say a pass on the bolt throwers. We've also got grudge throwers. These are basically catapults, these stone thrower style things. For 95 points, they're not super cheap. You can get a cannon for 100 points. But stone throwers are really good this edition. I think a lot of people are sleeping on them. And so, because at the end of the day, it is a stone thrower, and it can sit back and bombard people, I am going to give the grudge thrower a smash. Dwarf cannons are an iconic unit of the faction, and an infamous one from previous editions, but they have taken a big hit. They only do D3 wounds now. Even with that, I'm going to give them a tentative smash. They're not the death machines they once were. Great cannons clearly outclass them, but they are a very important tool in the dwarf toolbox. Because at the end of the day, they are one of the more reliable ways you have of dealing with big monsters. Even though they're not the machines that they once were, they're still a vital component to your dwarf army. Organ guns, on the other hand, are an easy smash. 120 points makes them pretty cheap, and they have a 30-inch range. So unlike the Empire Hellblaster volley gun, they can hit the enemy pretty much from the get-go. And as someone who's used a Dwarf Organ gun, I really, really appreciate it. And as someone who's used an Empire Hellblaster, I really hate it when I get to one, I can't hit the enemy with it. Organ guns don't do as many shots as Hellblasters, but that makes them somewhat more reliable. That means that they don't tend to roll that misfire as often, so you're not at that -1 ballistic skill as often. So when you work it all out, organ guns are more reliable, long range, and can still do a great amount of damage. Fantastic unit, I never leave home without one. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about the flame cannon. It basically shoots a flame template at people, and it's got a 12-inch range, and then you roll an artillery die to see how far it goes after that. But it's only strength 5A for -1. So why wouldn't you just go for an organ gun, which has got longer range, much more reliable, and can potentially armor bane its way up to a really good AP? Flame cannons are cool, don't get me wrong, but I rarely see a reason to put one in my army over something like an organ gun. So they're going to get a pass. Now that covers all of the units in the Forces of Fantasy Dwarf Mounted Holds, but do not forget we have got the Arcane Journal for the Dwarves as well. Our first unit in this expansion is a named character, Thorgrym, Karl of the Damaz Kron. Thorgrym is a Thane and he may be included in any Dwarven Mountain Holds army. His stat line is very similar to that of a regular Thane, although he does come with an extra wound and an extra pip of leadership. Of course, being a named character, he also has a laundry list of special rules and equipment. He has got Gromrel Armor, allowing him to reroll 1s to his armor save. We've also got Grudge Law, which means that when he throws down his Grudge Stone, he replaces Hatred Orcs and Goblins with Hatred All Enemies, meaning you get full rerolls to hit in the first round of any combat. Speaking of the Grudge Stone, it's like an Oath Stone, but on steroids. It gives Thorgrym and the unit he has joined Unbreakable. They automatically pass any panic test they are required to make, but once it has been thrown down, they cannot choose to flee as a charge reaction and cannot move other than to give ground to make a follow-up move or to reform. On the one hand, this seems absolutely trash because not being able to move means that your opponent might just not engage your unit, just move around them, and then essentially they're just stuck there because you can't pick the Grudge Stone up again. When it's down, it's down. But on the other hand, you can do it during any start of turn subphase. So if your opponent lines up, I'm going to take out Thorgrym, I'm going to get that big chunk of points, and then you go, well, guess what? Bang, Grudge Stone down. Your opponent might be able to ignore Thorgrym, or he might have already overcommitted, and if he goes somewhere else, it'll throw him off. It'll be a bit of a curveball. It'll be off balance. It's definitely a double-edged sword. As for his equipment, he comes with the Armor of Skaldor, which gives him a 5+ armor save because it's heavy armor, and in addition, he gets a 4+ ward save, but only against Killing Blow or wounds suffered that were caused by an attack that has multiple wounds. That's a real shame. The fact that he basically has just got heavy armor and a shield and he's on a 4-up save. Oh no. That is a real blow to the character. There's not enough durability there at all. Fortunately for Thorgrym, whilst his armor is a little lackluster, his weapon, Grudge Settler, is amazing. I really like it. It's strength +2, meaning that he's strength 6 in total. So unless you're going against the toughest of opponents, you're going to be wounding them on 4s or even 3s. It's AP -1 with Armor Bane 1, so it can start cleaving through the armor. But the big thing is that it comes with the Master Rune of Smiting, giving him multiple wounds, D6. Woohoo, baby. Big things are going to be hesitant to go after Thorgrym. And he also has the Rune of Parrying on this weapon. So even though he's only really got heavy armor and a shield, he is -1 to hit. The big question is he a smash or a pass? And it's really hard to make my mind upon this one. Because on the one hand, that Grudge Stone does give you the potential to mess up your opponent's plans. Being able to get Hatred All Enemies is very powerful. And he does hit like a truck with that Master Rune of Smiting. What is holding me back on Thorgrym is the fact that he is 250 points and really he only has a 4+ save. If he gets into a challenge with someone, there's a real chance he just gets killed before he gets to do anything. Although that extra wound plus the -1 to hit might keep him alive. He's essentially a hero level character who can fairly reliably dunk on other hero level characters, but is probably going to struggle against a properly kitted out Lord character. And that's a bit of an issue, because he is priced like a Lord level character with that 250 points. So overall, I'm going to give him a pass. But I think it's only just a pass. I'm only just overlooking him. And I could easily be persuaded to change my tune and give this guy a smash. Next up, we have Umgrim Ironfist, Slayer King of Carrot Cadron. Umgrim has a frankly insane stat line. Weapon skill 9 is bonkers. It means that he pretty much hits everyone on 3s, but they're going to be hitting him on like 4s. And against a lot of line infantry and regular units, he's going to be hitting them on 2s, and they're going to be hitting him on like 5s. This high weapon skill plays into his overall defensive profile because he's also got light armor and he's got the Slayer Crown, which gives him +2 to his armor. So really he's got a 4+ save, and he has a 5+ ward save as well. And he has Gromwell armor, meaning that you get to reroll 1s on his armor save. This makes him surprisingly durable for a Slayer character, considering that Slayers normally have absolutely 0 defensive stat line. But all of this is just really a Brucey bonus, because you're not taking Umgrim, a Slayer King, to tank hits, you're taking him to dole them out. And he does this with his 4 attacks from the Axe of Dargo. This has strength +2, putting him to strength 6, AP -3, and its magical attacks with Monster Slayer. Also, because he is a Slayer, when this model makes a roll to wound, a roll of a 4+ is always successful, regardless of the target's toughness. So is Umgrim a smash or pass? Well, actually, he's both. For a lot of people, he's going to be too pricey at 315 points. But the main reason you would take him, and why you could consider him a smash, is his King of the Slayer hold rule. This allows him to take units of Slayers as core choices. You can also include special units like Duoomseekers, and basically he unlocks the potential to have an entire Slayer army. So if you're the kind of person that really wants to lean into that theme, then Umgrim is an auto-include. You're going to have to take him. But if you're not interested in taking Slayers, then you're going to leave him at home every single time. Our third unit is another named character. This is Burlok Damison. Burlok is an engineer with a slightly improved stat line. He's got an extra pip of weapon skill, which you're probably not going to use because he's a ranged character and he supports ranged units. But he does also come with an extra pip of leadership, which can be very handy because there's a lot of panic and leadership involved in the old world. Now, Burlok comes with a whole bunch of special rules, but really there's only one that you're going to be interested in: range finding optics. This is an enhanced version of the Artillery Master the normal Dwarf Engineer gets. Not only do you get that rerolls to 1 or that reroll to a single artillery dice, but also Burlok in any unit he has joined does not suffer the usual -1 to hit modifier when shooting at long range. This is a huge buff. One of the things that I find always screws over my shooting in Old World is that long range modifier. I can't tell you the number of times I've let off a volley of Empire handgunners only to find only a couple of shots make their mark. Being able to just remove one of the most common to hit modifiers is fantastic. And not only can you combine this with the Quallers or the Thunderers, but you could combine this with Iron Drakes and their Drake guns, which are really good. And Iron Drakes actually come with the ballistic skill of 4, so you're now hitting on like 3s all of the time. That's a lot of firepower. As a result, I think Burlok is an auto-include in many dwarf armies, and he gets an easy smash from me. But continuing with the theme of engineering, we've got the Engineer Sapper. This guy has a movement of 3, weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 5, strength 4, toughness 4, 2 wounds, initiative 2, attacks 2, leadership 9, and is 70 points. He comes with a hand weapon and heavy armor. You can give him a pistol, a great weapon, and he can take up to 50 points of runes. But its special rules are why you're taking this guy. Dig in means that during any command subphase, if you're not engaged in combat, this character may attempt to lead the unit in digging a sum of field works by making a leadership test using their own leadership. If the test is passed, this character in any unit they've joined becomes entrenched. Entrenched is going to be behind partial cover, so that's harder to hit with shooting weapons, and to be defending a low linear obstacle. And if you should move for any reason, you're no longer entrenched. This is really big because if you're behind a low linear obstacle, it means that the opponent doesn't get their initiative bonus for charging. So if you have a Dwarf Sapper, it means that your opponents will be starting to strike you at initiative order. Now, if they've got strike last on great weapons, then either it means you're going to be striking at the same time, or you might actually get to strike before your opponent. That's a really big deal, and it provides a really good solution to one of the big problems that dwarves have, which is constantly getting struck first and having to take the blow before getting to strike back. And great weapons are very, very popular in the old world because they're a really big boost to your damage. We've also got the hostile terrain special rule. Any model that ends its movement within the command range of one or more characters with the special rule that are not fleeing or engaged in combat must make a dangerous terrain test. So if your opponent keeps ending their move, you're just going to keep taking more dangerous terrain tests. I don't know Old World rules 100%, so correct me down below in chat, but I believe in Old World, movement is any time you move. This got clarified in the FAQ. So it wasn't just when you move in the movement phase, it's any time you count as making a move, this hostile terrain thing would kick off. So do you make a move or a charge? Hostile terrain. Do you beat the dwarf unit and decide to follow up, either via a give ground or via a fall back in good order? Take a dangerous terrain test. At that point, when your enemy is so close, they're going to end up just taking loads and loads of dangerous terrain tests. Because I know it says they're not fleeing or engaged in combat, but I presume that counts to the character, of course. And once the character has, let's say, fallen back in good order, they flee and then they automatically rally and they reform. At that point, your opponent then makes their follow-up. So at that point, you're no longer fleeing, right? Let me know if I'm understanding this, because if that is how it works, then hostile terrain is amazing, because you just keep making your opponent roll dice, and every time they roll a 1, they're just going to start taking wounds after wounds after wounds. Considering that the Engineer Sapper is only 70 points and comes with 2, frankly, very, very good abilities, yes, he's limited to a Dwarf Expeditionary Force, but he is going to be an auto-include if you run that army. Our next unit is possibly my favourite one in all of the Arcane Journal. The Duoomseekers. These guys are absolutely bonkers. They're a character that you can take as a mercenary unit in a Dwarven Mountain Hold or Empire army, or of course you can take them as a normal unit if you've got the Slayer King. Duoomseekers are incredibly flavorful. Everything about them is just really cool. They've got 2d3 attacks. They do impact hits, d3 plus 1. That's as many impact hits as a steam tank, I think, or chariot. And then they have got Unbreakable. Their Whirlwind of Death special rule means that they always wound on a 4+. Their First the Fray means that they've got really long charge range, but the really, just the best bit about them is their Duoomseeker special rule, which means that at the end of the battle, if the Duoomseeker has been slain, it is worth no victory points to your opponent. But if the Duoomseeker is still alive, then the enemy wins the victory points equal to 100% of its points cost. Now, what's kind of crazy about this is in a Slayer army, you could take 3 or 4 of these things, depending on if you're going to a tournament with like the rule of 3. But if you took like 3 of these things, for example, and you each gave them 50 points worth of magical equipment, that's 300 points, right? And if you just get them killed, that is 300 points that you have literally denied your opponent. And considering that games of Old World are just won or lost on that, that could actually be game-winning or game-changing. I absolutely love it. And if I was to run a Slayer army, firstly, these are the guys that would make me want to do it. And secondly, I would put as many of them in my army as possible. And I would just be running around with a big grin on my face, charging them into everything I could. But that's enough about characters for the time being. Now let's get into my favourite part of every Old World army, the infantry. And first into the fray, we have the Royal Clan Warriors. These have basically got the same stat line as normal Dwarf Warriors, but they cost a bit more at 10 points a pop. The reason why these guys are a little bit more expensive is firstly, you get access to their special weapon, the Gromril Great Axe. This is strength +2, AP -3, but it does require 2 hands and strikes last, and it does cost you 1 point per model, and you have to trade your shields in, so that will reduce your overall save. But I don't think the Great Axes are the way to go with Royal Clan Warriors. I think the better way is to use them as Wish.com Ironbreakers, because they have Gromril armor. So this means that with their shields and heavy armor, they'll be on a 4+ save, and they'll have that Gromril armor special rule. Now, no, this isn't the same as Ironbreakers. Ironbreakers have got that 3+ save because they've got the full plate. But it does mean that when you're filling out your core requirement, if you're looking for a good unit that can just take a punch and just hold the line, then your Royal Clan Warriors can do that. And that means you don't have to spend your special selection on Ironbreakers, and so it can make your army much more efficient. Royal Clan Warriors are limited to Royal Clan armies, so you can't take them all the time. But in that Royal Clan army, I think they are an auto-include, and I think they could potentially make your army very, very efficient points-wise. Next, we have the Imperial Dwarves. These are dwarves who essentially live in the Empire and have started adopting some of their customs. Their stat line is the same as a regular Dwarf Warrior, and they are 8 points per model. However, they do not come as standard with that dwarven heavy armor, only coming with hand weapons and light armor. But you can upgrade them to have heavy armor and take shields for 1 point each, but this will then make them 10 points a pop. But here's the thing. What makes these guys unique is that they can take spears. That's right, for 1 point per model, you can have spear-armed dwarves. And that alone is so unique and so cool that I absolutely love them. Even better, you can take these guys as mercenaries in both a dwarven army, but also an Empire of Man army. So if you're an Empire player that's been thinking, I really wish I had a unit with a 4+ save that also had weapon skill 4, that also can attack in multiple ranks, then these are the guys for you. Sure, if you go all in, they are going to cost you 11 points each, and that is pretty pricey. But it's so cool! Imperial Dwarves are going to get the smash for Rule of Cool alone. But now it's time for us to take to the skies in our Scout Gyrocopters. I'm going to be upfront with you guys. I think that the Scout Gyrocopter is an easy smash. The reason for this is because fundamentally it is a gyrocopter, and gyrocopters are just good. They're one of the better dwarf units. You do only count as having heavy armor rather than full plate, and you do lose the bombing run. But the bombing run was one of the worst bits about the gyrocopter. No one ever really took it into account or used it. And instead you get hit and run, which means after a round of combat, if you win it, you can choose to fall back in good order rather than making a follow-up or pursuit move. This can make the gyrocopters a really sneaky unit, running in, doing damage, and then getting out of there before your opponent has a chance to counter-attack or pick you out of the sky. Movement wins games. Gyrocopters have got extra movement, therefore it's a great ability. Our next unit is considered by many to be the best unit in the Dwarf Arcane Journal. There was a lot of hype around this unit, and I think it has delivered it. It is the Dwarf Cart. The stats and equipment of the Dwarven Cart are pretty much irrelevant. The only thing you need to know is it's 65 points, so it's very cheap, and you have to pick whether it's going to be a Bugman's Cart or a Miner's Cart. Depending on which option you pick will determine which buff your army gets. If you go for the Bugman's Cart, where essentially it is just filled to the top with beer, then during the command subphase of your turn, any dwarf unit that is not fleeing or engaged in combat that is within 6 inches of a friendly Bugman's Cart gains a +1 modifier to its movement characteristic until the end of the turn. This is very good. because one of the big weaknesses of dwarves is their slow movement. This affects all dwarf units, not just infantry ones. So if you want some even faster gyrocopters or something, you can do that. Just chuck him a pint as he's flying past. If you want to go on the offensive and have a dwarf combat army, then you can actually do that, because you'll be moving that extra inch or extra 2 inches if you march all over the place. And don't forget, you've also got marching column. So combine a Bugman's Cart with a marching column of dwarves which are drilled, and you might actually have dwarves that are getting across the board very quickly. And then combine it with the Anvil of Doom to be able to move again. Yeah, Bugman's Cart solves all dwarf movement problems for 65 points a pop. But if you prefer a more defensive approach, then the Miner's Cart is perfect for you. Any dwarf unit that is in 3 inches of a friendly Miner's Cart that is not fleeing or engaged in combat may make a stand and shoot charge reaction and or a shooting attack as if it were equipped with blasting charges. Additionally, when the Miner's Cart loses its last wound, it might explode. But let's take a look at those blasting charges for a second. Blasting charges are somewhat interesting. They've got a range of 6 inches with strength 3, AP -1, armor bane 1, flaming attacks, and quick shot. It's definitely more of a defensive weapon, and being able to do this with units that are getting charged is quite nice, because any damage they do could go towards combat res, but strength 3 might find that they're quite limiting. Out of the two, I think the Bugman's Cart is clearly the winner and is an easy smash. I would not be surprised if many competitive dwarf armies include at least one Bugman's Cart to support some of their more vital combat units. But last and certainly not least, we have got what might be my new favorite war machine. And yes, that is including the Empire Hellblaster volley gun, the Goblin-Hewer. This is a dwarf slayer war machine that has a potentially frightening, staggering amount of firepower. It's got a 36-inch range, and its shots are at strength 4, AP -1 with armor bane 1. It is cumbersome, move or shoot, and it has the Whirling Doom special rule. Whirling Doom. With a single salvo of spinning axes, a Goblin-Hewer can cut through several ranks of troops. When shooting a Goblin-Hewer, roll an artillery dice before making any rolls to hit. The number of shots fired is equal to the roll on the artillery dice. But you also add a D3 modifier per rank, including the rear rank, even if it is incomplete, if the Goblin-Hewer lies in the unit's front or rear arc, and you get D3 per file if the Goblin-Hewer lies in a unit's flank arc. If you're playing as someone who's in like a 5x4 or 6x4 formation, which is pretty common in Old World, that's an artillery dice plus 4d3 attacks. And don't forget, this unit benefits from the engineer special rule. So if it rolls a misfire, you can re-roll it, or if it doesn't roll a misfire, you can start giving it re-roll 1s to hit, making it even more accurate. Now sure, it's got a random number of shots, but when it goes off, it's gonna go off. And it's got a 36-inch range, so its half range is like 18 inches, which is actually a pretty long half range. This thing could get in one turn against, let's say, a 4-rank unit, 22 shots, hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1s. That is really, really cool. And for only 120 points, or maybe a bit more if you want to spend up to 50 points on engineering runes, it's not an overly expensive unit at all. And anytime that I can include these in one of my armies, I'm definitely going to do so. And that, short beards, long beards, and grey beards, is every single Dwarven Mountain Holds unit reviewed, smashed or passed. But all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Is there a unit that you think I have been too harsh on, or a unit that I've been too generous towards? And what other factions do you want me to do this kind of video for? Smash or pass orcs and goblins? I definitely smashed that troll princess. But of course, moving swiftly on, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.